The Master's Mysteries. Tales of Magical Mastery. Episode 15. Late at night, a group of people appeared in the deserted mountains. They walked silently, creating an eerie atmosphere. As they approached, it became clear that the group was dressed in white, with the leader wearing mourning clothes and carrying a red lacquered coffin. They were a funeral procession. Everyone in the group wore a mournful expression, especially the leader, who was the eldest son of the deceased. Tears streamed down his face as he held a black earthen basin in his hands. Judging by the size of the funeral procession, it seemed to be a prominent elder from a wealthy family who had passed away, hence the large number of male family members attending the funeral. Taoist, someone has died. Great, you see, someone has died. Isn't it inappropriate to be so happy? Liao Fengyi and the Taoist had just left Huangni village and encountered the procession on their way to Funia Mountain. Unexpectedly, the Taoist's face lit up at the sight of the funeral procession. What do you know? I can tell that this person has reached the end of their natural life. There's no need to be sad. Besides, aren't you hungry? Come to think of it, I am hungry. So what? Liao Fengyi was tired of the Taoist's endless babbling, but he was only interested in the Taoist's final sentence. After spending 2 days wandering in the mountains since leaving the divine healer's house, claiming not to be hungry would be a lie. Then come with me. There's good food waiting. Is that a good idea? Seeing the Taoist's cheerful expression, Liao Fengyi guessed that he must have come up with a plan to eat and drink for free. So he followed the Taoist down the hill towards the funeral procession. To be honest, after spending so much time with the Taoist, Liao Fengyi didn't dislike him as much. He knew that despite his unconventional ways, the Taoist was not a bad person. Plus, he always had unique ideas. That's why, under his guidance, the two of them managed to blend in with the crowd. After half an hour, a new tomb stood in a vast cemetery on the mountain. Dozens of mourners knelt together, listening to the yin and yang master reciting the memorial text. But who would have thought that behind this new grave, a dark figure suddenly appeared and reached out to grab the offerings placed in front of the tomb? And who else could it be but the Taoist? He had brought Liao Fengyi along to join the procession, and once the grave was built, he pulled Liao Fengyi to hide behind it, all to steal the abundant offerings. Come on, let's eat. At this moment, the ceremony was still ongoing, but the Taoist had already grabbed a couple of large steamed buns and torn off 2 chicken legs before retreating. Of course, I've been wandering the world for years. Master Tao, your methods are truly impressive. Liao Fengyi had no energy to criticize the Taoist's behavior anymore. The Taoist took his words as praise for his cleverness. Why not? Haven't you heard that the gods enjoy the offerings? Is it appropriate for us to do this? Liao Fengyi didn't mind eating the offerings. In his childhood, when he had no food, he used to steal offerings from the local temple. But he had never done it as openly as the Taoist. You don't understand. It means, Master Tao, why are these people burying someone in the middle of the night? And why did I say their natural lifespan has ended? Liao Fengyi really didn't understand the funeral customs as well as the Taoist did. The fact that these people came to bury someone late at night seemed unusual, and now he was even more confused about the Taoist's mention of the natural lifespan. Su Sire lived until the age of 80, fulfilling his duty to heaven. Listen, he's starting. After listening for a while, Liao Fengyi finally understood that the yin and yang master was reciting the deceased biography and cause of death, providing a summary of their life as a resume for the underworld, giving a general idea of who the deceased was and how they had died. Su Sire was born in May of the year Dingtao, on the 13th day, during the Yu hour. He was intelligent from a young age. Later, due to heavenly summons, his soul flew to the netherworld. After listening for a while, Liao Fengyi began to understand that the yin and yang master was reciting the deceased biography and cause of death, providing a summary of their life as a resume for the underworld, giving a general idea of who the deceased was and how they had died. "Doctor, how is my father doing?" After listening and guessing for a while, they had a rough idea. It turned out that the deceased was named Sue and had already reached the age of 80. 3 days ago, he fell ill, and his filial son had called for the best doctor in town. "It's nothing serious. He just caught a cold, and his age made him weaker. Resting for a while will do. No use. I'm going to die. There's no point in taking those bitter medicinal soups anymore." Unexpectedly, the bedridden Sue suddenly gave up on medical treatment. He believed that his time had come. Useless. "I'm going to die. No need to drink those bitter medicinal soups." However, Sue, lying on the bed, inexplicably gave up on treatment. He believed that his time had come. "I see. The Grim Reaper has come to fetch me." So, Sue Grandpa has been seeing Bai Wucheng appearing in his house these days. There's no need to ask. It's definitely for him. And he said that Bai Wucheng even promised him a high-ranking position in the underworld. "Look, he's here again, coming to fetch me." Son and the doctor were terrified by his words. Suddenly, Sue Grandpa shouted loudly, sat up from the bed, and stared straight out the window. How can this be?" The two people were frightened and followed Sue Grandpa's gaze out of the window, only to unexpectedly see a white figure swaying. "Sue Chengru's time has come. Quickly accompany me back to the netherworld and report. When wealth is born." Sue Grandpa's house is a wealthy one with a tall entrance gate. But at this moment, a white figure passed over the gate, wearing a white pointed hat, a pale face, and a long tongue. It was the soul-reaping Bai Wucheng. The appointed time has passed, and divine punishment is inevitable. Bai Wucheng's voice echoed as he urged Sue Grandpa to join him on the journey. After calling 3 times in succession, he turned and left the entrance gate of Sue's house. He floated in the air, slowly drifting forward, as if urging Sue Grandpa to catch up with him quickly. At that moment, an old man happened to be walking along the small path outside Sue Mansion. As soon as he turned past the courtyard wall of Sue's house, he noticed a white figure and instinctively looked up. One glance was enough to make cold sweat soak through his clothes in an instant. He saw a giant white figure, over 10 feet tall, hopping towards the mountains, with a puppet-like figure following behind. The white figure was identical to the black and white impermanence figures worshipped in the temple, and the person behind was Sue's old master. But at this moment, Sue Grandpa's figure was ethereal and did not resemble a living person. The person kept staring at the terrifying Grim Reaper as it led Sue Grandpa far away. He didn't even move a muscle, afraid that making a sound would cause his soul to be taken as well. "There's a ghost." Only after the 2 ghostly figures disappeared did he let out a loud shout, which spread throughout the entire town. "Ugh, me." Let's return to the topic of Sue's house. Just as the people in the town witnessed Sue Grandpa being taken away by the Grim Reaper, suddenly Sue Grandpa, who was still on the bed, let out a sharp scream, and then his whole body started convulsing. Watching Sue Grandpa, who had just been able to sit up and talk, now gasping for breath, and eventually losing consciousness, his eyes vacant. Father, Sue, Grandpa." Sue Grandpa died like this. He said before his death that Bai Wucheng told him his life had reached its end, and because he hadn't done any evil deeds in his lifetime, he could become a minor official in the underworld. This was what they called being sealed in the yin. To facilitate the summoning of souls by the yin officials, the burial is performed at night. So that's how it is. According to legends, a person who dies after being sealed in the yin will have their soul and spirit taken away by the Grim Reaper to report to the underworld. The remaining soul will be collected by the yin officials, hence the choice of nighttime burial for convenience. Liao Fengyi finally understood. But at this moment, he suddenly heard a commotion from the crowd in front of the grave. People were shouting and screaming in chaos. Liao Fengyi and the old Taoist didn't know what had happened. They hurriedly leaned over the tomb, and looked ahead, and both were stunned. It turned out that a group of people who were conducting a ceremony suddenly noticed a large white shadow appearing behind them. It was Bai Wucheng, the soul-reaping deity. The appointed time has come. Hurry and depart. Seeing life when alive. He still had the appearance of a hanged ghost, bouncing towards the crowd. From his tone, it seemed he had come to take Su Grandpa's soul on the journey. It can be inferred that in the middle of the night, in this desolate graveyard in the mountains, such a terrifying thing suddenly appeared. It's no wonder people would be scared to death. They all felt their legs go weak. Filial sons and relatives knelt down to send off the souls to the underworld. Even though everyone's legs went weak, the yin-yang master showed no signs of panic. He shouted loudly, "Send off the souls to the underworld." And all the people immediately knelt down again. Seeing everyone kneeling and kowtowing, the yin-yang master lit the funeral notice in his hand and burned it as an offering to the heavens. Lonely souls and wild ghosts, taking the silver money, do not disturb the souls on their journey. Then he took out a handful of paper money from his pocket, raised his hands, and scattered it in the air. The way he scattered the paper money was quite clever. It was carried by the wind and spread out completely, drifting over the heads of the mourners like snowflakes. Because there was Bai Wucheng behind them, these people dared not raise their heads, fearing that they would collide with the yin-yang master and have their souls hooked. They kept their heads lowered, allowing the paper money to fall on them. Let's talk about that filial son. A piece of paper money fell on his shoulder, and at first, he didn't pay much attention to it. But after a while, he noticed that the paper money seemed to emit a strange smell. This smell was like it had a life of its own, drilling into people's noses. Just as he took a breath, he felt his mind becoming increasingly confused. Before he could figure out what was happening, he suddenly felt darkness in front of him. Then he lost consciousness and fell to the ground. Not only him, but everyone else was affected when the paper money fell on them. Watching dozens of people stumbling and falling to the ground as if they were drunk, they soon lost consciousness. No one noticed that at this moment, a wicked smile appeared on the corner of the yin-yang master's mouth. In the blink of an eye, a large group of people lay down in the graveyard, leaving only the yin-yang master and Bai Wucheng floating nearby, coldly staring at the people on the ground. Liao Fengyi and the old Taoist were not affected because they were behind the tomb mound facing the opposite direction of the wind. Seeing the sudden turn of events in front of them, they couldn't help but take a cold breath. What exactly is the relationship between this yin-yang master and the terrifying Bai Wucheng? What are they trying to do?